Just when we thought we were out, it pulled us back in. So, A Night of the Seven Kingdoms just ended, and it somehow revitalized the Game of Thrones franchise, which seemed to be flailing after the second season of House of the Dragon. Adapted from George R. R. Martin's beloved novella, the show ran for 6 episodes and has been received fairly warmly by a large section of the audience, holding a 93% rating on Rotten Tomatoes as well. So, on this week's episode, in true Two Please fashion, we have decided to jump back into the wonderful world of Westeros, discussing our first impressions of the show, some of the most memorable moments, and a fair bit of lore digging. I feel like this season gave us quite a bit to go on. Anyway, I'm Abhin, that's Rohit. We're joined by Falah, who you probably recognize from the graphic novels episode, link in the description. Let's start the show. So, A Night of the Seven Kingdoms just finished its run today, written for the screen by Ira Parker and starring Peter Claffey and Dexter Saul Ansel. And it tells the tale of Sir Dunk and his beloved squire Egg as they go on many adventures 90 years before the events of A Song of Ice and Fire. The show, like I mentioned in the intro, has been received very well, it would seem, by a large section of his viewers. And I have thoughts to go on it. But before we get into it, I'd love to know what your first impressions of the show were. We'll start with Falah today because you're the guest. What do you think of the show, man?
So, to give you a little bit of context, I hated the ending of Game of Thrones so much that I'd given away all my books. So, when this show, I think you sent me the trailer. I think from the trailer's first frame, I'm like, yo, I'm hooked. Like, I'm invested in this type of thing. What I feel like this did different from a lot of other shows is the fact that it went back to basics, brought in likable characters, like characters that you could relate to, and there's not too many storylines going on. I think the problem with Game of Thrones was that there were like 20 odd storylines going on and everything had to tie together. Here it's very clear, one story, one tournament, two likable leads, and other supporting characters who also seem interesting. So it really like brought you back into the world and felt warm and fuzzy to be back. I think this is like a fresh breath of air, I feel.
Just to quickly add to what Falah said, I think I agree with everything he said. And like you said, smaller scale, I say much less serious, right? Stakes are much
Mm.
lesser, and there's a lot more charm, right? Right from the soundtrack to how eminently likable both the leads are. The only thing I would sort of draw attention to, which was probably the only, I wouldn't call it downside, but a peculiarity, was all the fart and poop and dick jokes where I was like, why? Right? That left me with a question mark. But other than that, I loved, I think, all of it. Yeah.
I'm a poop and fart joke kind of guy. I love a good poop and fart joke. And even me, in that first 5 minutes of the opening episode, where they kind of undercut the this real sad moment with a literal shit joke, I was like, I'm not quite sure what tone this show is going for, but I think it's meant to just kind of snap you out of your expected like programming from other or conditioning that you've had from other Game of Thrones television shows. I thought this was a breath of fresh air. I have rewatched the pilot about 4 to 5 times at this point. It makes me feel joy. I think is very rare in a world set in the world of Westeros, where if you look at the other shit that is happening in the other corners of the world, it's not a pleasant place to be. But somehow, in this little pocket in the Ashford Meadow, there is a wonderful tale being told of a man trying to find his place in the world, possibly living a lie, and meeting a great friend who he then goes on to form a bond that will change the history of this world forever, right? That is how important this entire connection is. Yet it feels light. Like Falah said, it's a single narrative, so it follows a very straightforward adventure, even though there are a fair bit of twists and turns. I think this was much needed, especially given what a shitty time we're living in. And I think it was needed as a great palate cleanser for those of us who've been a little jaded with some of the stuff that's been coming out with House of the Dragon. There was a big letter that was published, I think, just a few weeks or a week prior to the release of the show about how George R. R. Martin had real problems with the third season of House of the Dragon, which we'll get to in the course of this episode. But anyway, to cut a long story short, loved it. Great fan. Was a big fan of the source material. Even bigger fan of the television show, even if that even makes sense. I think some of the choices made in the show really help improve upon the source material, and not a lot of shows are capable of doing such a thing.
And in fact, that's as good a segue as we could get to quickly talk about what are the things they did do, behind the scenes to arguably elevate the show even above the source material. I think I agree with you there. And I feel just, quick mentions to, a couple of things. The one thing that really stuck with me was, the story from behind the scenes of episode 4, where you have this amazing scene of Raymond getting knighted by Lionel Baratheon, and at the same time you see Peter Claffey's Dunk looking up towards, probably Arlen in his head, Arlen of Penetree, and that entire poignant shot of Dunk looking up was by accident, right? The crane was just moving, and Peter Claffey just happened to look into the camera, and the director spotted that and said, "Hey, it's a great shot. Let's keep this in." The other thing that the adaptation has very faithfully managed to translate onto screen is the very clear inspiration that George R.R. Martin drew from Ivanhoe, right? Which is probably the biggest inspiration for the setting and the mood of the Duncan X stories. And the way the tourney is set up, where the joust arena and stuff is, I would say, pretty much lifted from Ivanhoe and brought into the modern age. So I think in terms of set design as well, they've got their inspirations bang on, right? The inspirations that drove George R.R. Martin is what they've really picked from as well. But any other stories, Abhin, that you want to cover behind the scenes or
I
Falah?
personally feel like half the battle is won with the casting itself. I feel
Yes, I
like,
was going to get into that.
I've been watching
Mm.
a lot of these interviews of these actors, Ansel and Peter Claffey, and I think they're basically their characters in real life also. Like the dynamic that they share, the chemistry that they have, it's like so adorable that they've actually managed to find Dunk and Egg in real life and put them in the show. So I think half the battle is won with the casting. Even like the guy who played Lionel Baratheon also, I think he
Yeah,
was a scene stealer. In every scene that he was like chewing the scenery. Even though I've seen him in other stuff before, like here he
the
really like
gentleman.
comes good.
Yeah.
And even the guy playing Baelor Targaryen as well, like like he has that old world charm.
My last
Mm.
exposure to him was he played Tony Blair in The Crown. So it's like cognitive
Oh.
dissonance because they look very different, very different energy, right? And then to
Mm.
see him in this, to add to your point, he has such a calmness and measured and sort of reassuring approach. It's worlds apart. I think he's a great actor.
I also want to I mean, before like Falah mentioned, we talk about Egg for a bit. Like, I think this is one of the few child performances that wasn't irritating. Like the thing with child
Mm.
actors, especially when you're forced to play loud, or you have this character who's kind of in your face, is this annoying little prick. It never felt overbearing. I was like, oh my god, this kid needs a
Mm.
whack. Like he just went, he towed that line perfectly. Where you're like, okay, I want to see more of him. Where did he go when he's not on screen? And when he's being the pompous person that he is, given his lineage, you like, I get it. I feel like this kid really understands the character, and which is why I'm so, I don't blame George R. R. Martin for being like, you know what, I'm just going to tell you things that could possibly ignite a theory war in
Mm.
in like Westerosi fan circles. Great casting. I even want to give a shout out to the guy who played Aerion Targaryen, Finn Bennett, who I think Aeron in the book is a little more flamboyant. He's got long hair. He
Mm.
wears very flashy clothes. This one is just like he played him with the guy who just has disdain for people that aren't of the same, the same class of living as he is. It's like, this guy just he doesn't care. He knows he thinks he's above you, and there's a sense of unpleasantness around him, which I thought came out perfectly. Finn Bennett was really good at that.
And I don't know, dude. Like, is it worth reading the books? Because I think that's the mistake I made with Game of Thrones. Is that I read the books, I caught up with the story, and then I read ahead. So then I hated every interpretation after that. So is it worth reading the books according to you?
I think yes, it is definitely worth reading the source material, because in this scenario, it I feel like Dunk in this show has a little more layers. I mean, has a lot more layers to him than he does in the novella. I mean, to be fair, this is a perfectly straightforward short story, so there's not a lot happening in terms of nuance. I think the
Mm.
nuance really starts to rear its head in the second, which is the Swan Sword. I refer to it as Westerosi body heat because it is what it is. You've got, and the third is the Mystery Knight, which again is its own, like, not even a who done it, but like who is that person really, kind of a story.
Mm.
So Definitely check it out. I mean, I would never say don't check it out if you like don't have time. Even there's a graphic novel that's running about that was published in
Mm.
2007. So multiple versions of this exist.
But let's get into the section next that I've been wanting to discuss, which are memorable moments from the show. I think there are so many. Right? Each episode, there are at least
Mm.
two, three things that have sort of stayed behind with you even after the credits have started rolling. In the first episode, of course, so many memorable moments. The dance in the Baratheon tent being one of them.
Mm.
But the one moment or the line that really stuck with me is right at the end, right when Egg tells Dunk about how shooting stars bring luck and how everyone else is
Mm.
sleeping in their tents and therefore is unable to see them. So in a way, he's saying privilege has blinded them to the wonders of nature, or that sort of message. And Dunk just looks at him with all the innocence in the world and says, "So you're saying all the luck is ours?" It's like,
Mm.
bro, protect this guy at all costs. Like,
The
do it, my
whole
guy.
point. It was this little like a dagger to the heart. I was just like, ah, you're too pure for this world.
Even the in the first episode where the two sex workers, I don't know what the Westerosi term for them is, but when they're making fun of him, saying from one whore to another, and Dunk just seems
Mm.
hurt. He's this big, humongous guy, and he's hurt, and he says, "Must you mock me?"
Mm.
He's like, "Hey, don't make fun of this big guy, Papa." He's like, "Let him be."
So you start to unpack a lot of the stuff that he's clearly like holding on to. There's been a childhood with a lack of parents, the one person that he has, which again is not in the book. With the whole flashback to Rafe, and he was a bit of an ass in the books, but here it's just he's always been a shy kid, and he's always tried to find solace in the people that he's been around with, and yet for some reason they keep getting taken away from him. So there's a sense of
Yeah.
fear of just being in this world, and especially with Sir Arlen, when it opens up with him burying him, and he's there. He's a big hulking guy. Like this guy's what 6'5" or something. He's an ex-rugby player. You
Mm.
can clearly tell that he's huge, and there's a sense of vulnerability about him that is so disarming. Just like I want this guy to win. I want him to be good at everything. So much so that as the episodes progress, like episode one, that there's the scene in the tent where Lionel Baratheon asks him, "What are you doing here?" and like, "Why are you in my tent?" And he just says, "Supper." And there's this moment which dawns on Lionel that his privilege has blinded him to the plight of these people. There are people in that tent because there's food and they're just trying to eat to get by to another day. And I
Mm.
which is why when there's almost like this weird attraction that he has for him. And that entire dance sequence is when as soon as that began, I was like, dude, whatever. This is Thrones, but this is a very different kind of Thrones, and I
Mm.
adore it.
The other thing we probably have not mentioned enough is this show is more centered around the common folk, right? The
Mm.
Yes, towards the latter half of the season, it is about a bunch of lords fighting each other, but
Mm.
the first few episodes gives you a very, I would say, grassroots view of what living in this world that George R. R. Martin has created feels like. And it's
Mm.
centered on a lot of I don't know if you call them regular people or the lower middle class, where you have innkeepers, you have sex workers, you have hedge knights who are living hand to mouth pretty much. um,
Mm.
and it makes them endearing. It does not look down on these characters in any way, right? Which would have been
Mm.
so easy for them to do it, and it does not even elevate them unnecessarily. It just shows them as regular people, which is what makes
Mm.
them instantly endearing.
Okay.
With episode 2, the other thing I just wanted to draw attention, the last line again, where there's a
Hmm.
sort of steely determination in Dunk, where he says, on the morrow we'll see what Sir Arlen's hand has wrought. I think
Hmm.
I don't know if that's from the book or not, but that's a lovely line. I think Peter Claffey delivers it well, right, and sort of leaves you hyped at the end of the episode.
A lot of the show is taken straight from the book, like straight from the book, where which I think Ira Parker like worked with George R. R. Martin and decided, you know what, the source material is good, and fans want to see, it adapted. When the material is good, what's the point in trying to like change it and make it something it's not? So he's played it very to the point, just made a few couple of changes here and there, and it has worked. It has worked really well. And then, as you clearly see, the reception for it has kind of been a very strong justification.
Any other memorable moments you guys want to quickly run through? I know we've just heard the first two episodes.
No, the first episodes. I'm going to go to the third one, which is where uh, the third is where the big reveal happens, where Egg is revealed to be Aegon, where Dunk essentially punches the living daylights out of Aerion. This whole show is populated by these little characters that go on to become prominent figures, especially Raymond Fossaway, who is getting beaten up by his brother Stefan. I really love the first scene with Baelor, where Dunk goes to and basically he's trying to find a knight that could pledge for him. He says, sir, you broke lances with Sir Arlen at a particular tournament, and do you remember him? And Baelor is the only one who just remembers it, so much so that his brother Maekar is like, how do you remember a hedge knight from so many years? Like, how does that even
Baylor
work
is
out?
like Rain Man, bro.
That entire sequence is so hilarious. The opening, even though I know we're going back and forth a little bit, but his first introduction to one of the, I forget the name of the character, where he's trying to register for the tournament, and that discussion about having to give up your coat of arms, like your armor and your sword and your belongings, and then get it back at a ransom. And Dunk is like, I aim to win. It won't be a problem. And he promptly turns around and hits the door.
Yeah.
I love this character.
Also, I just want to draw attention to the fact that Aegon is like the Amit of Westeros. But every third bencho in Westeros is named Aegon. Like half the confusion that has been caused in the Song of Ice and in JRR's world is because people have no imagination. Targaryens especially have no imagination when it comes to naming their kids. They all sound the same. Same problem
Yeah,
is there in
first,
House of the
second,
Dragon
third of
also.
the whatever.
Yeah, even in House of the Dragon, like Daemon, Aemon, Aegon, Aemon, Aeron. Abey, yaar, like find some more syllable, guys. What the hell? But yeah, I just wanted
That's
to
what happens when you're inbred,
say
dude.
that. But yeah, sorry, Abhin, you were mentioning your favorite episode.
What is there to say about episode 5 that hasn't been said already? I just think it's a show that probably has a tenth of the budget of the rest of the Game of Thrones series, and they use fog very well to mask the clear deficiencies in the set design. But it is so claustrophobic. It is so dirty and muddy. Like while in episode 4 you have this hugely heroic reveal where Baelor is trying to steps up to become, to join Dunk in the Trial of the Seven, and there's a real nice build up, and it's heroic. The Game of Thrones theme is playing, and then you cut to the next episode, and it is just a fight for survival. Like in the first 10 seconds, he gets knocked back into a flashback. That's how painful it is, right?
Like your entire life
Yeah,
is flashing in front of your eyes, type shit.
Yeah.
yeah. Saving Private Dunk was.
But what a wonderful bit, like the whole idea of getting up just because it ties back to what happens when Sir Alan found him. So for context, I think the where they are, like when the flashback where Dunk essentially is stealing from a man who is dying, which I think is the Battle of the Redgrass Fields. It looks like the Battle of the Redgrass Fields. So, which is a hugely important chapter in this particular era, because the Battle of the Redgrass Fields is where the Blackfyre Rebellions, at least the first Blackfyre Rebellion, came to an end. So, for those of you who don't know, we'll do a bit of a lore dive here. So, the current king of Westeros during the time of this show is King Daeron II. His
Sorry,
dad,
this reminds me of the joke we made even in House of the Dragon. We know Westerosi history better than our real world.
yeah, exactly. So,
It's crazy. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah. So Daeron's dad, Aegon the Fourth, or Aegon the Unworthy, was a bit of an asshole. Basically, he stepped around, fathered a bunch of bastards, big fat toad like dude. And on his deathbed, he legitimized all his bastards. And he's like, cool, have fun, bye. And he gave his sword Blackfyre to, I think, Daemon Waters, one of his bastards. And he adopted the name Daemon Blackfyre because Blackfyre in this show is historically given to people who are viewed as kings. Like Rhaegar had it, Aegon had it. So it's kind of like the kingmaker sword, right? And Daemon was elected, but everyone thought he wasn't exactly the best because Daemon was considered to be the more Targaryen-like ruler. Then Daemon led the Blackfyre Rebellion using his brother Bittersteel. Then there was another dude called Brindle Rivers who ended up helping Daron out, who's gone on to become Bloodraven, who then goes on to become the Three-Eyed Raven we see in the show, right? So the first Blackfyre Rebellion essentially ended in the Battle of the Redgrass Fields, where Daemon was fighting heroically. I think I forget the night that he fought, and he was defeated, and he was basically sending him on his way. Where Brindle Rivers, being a truth, was like, "Hey, I'm going to shower you with arrows." So he showered him with arrows. Then he also killed Daemon's sons in the process. So that is where we pick up in that episode. We can kind of see like the reverse flags of the Blackfyres, which is a black dragon on a red background, right? That's the original logo. What's their logo?
Yeah.
So a bit of a lore dive there. Like
Yeah,
Rohit said, we
modern
know
nerd.
more of. Yeah, such a. This show, every time there's a good Game of Thrones show on television, it reignites my fandom for this fantasy that
Yeah,
it's a
yeah.
fantasy that doesn't exist.
I have some 3 tabs of a wiki of Ice and Fire open right now. So it's super immersive. So I don't blame you. I just wanted to point out how bizarre it is. I'm right with you over there.
So this flashback happens. We're introduced to his friend Rafe, and they're essentially saving money to get out of Flea Bottom, and she ends up dying. And it is that very moment where one of these gold cloaks, these asshole gold cloaks, is about to kill Dunk. One of them stabs them in the leg, and in that very moment, Sir Arlen, who's been drinking in that pub, just runs out and says, "In the name of the mother," and essentially saves him. And it also turns out that he's probably drinking because his squire died in this battle, like his nephew. So he's trying to drown out his sorrows. And there was a guy who went and translated that Dothraki song that he's singing throughout the show.
Not a guy, the
That
guy who created the language.
was it?
They got the link. Yeah. He put out the translation saying this is what the song means. I forgot his name. Peterson, the guy who created the contact.
So I found that to be such a nice bit of trivia after having watched the show. But anyway, coming back into real life, where Dunk has essentially got his ass kicked. Like nobody has got their ass kicked in a way he has for like this, from a protagonist perspective. Literally at death's door, and he wakes up and he has that huge moment. This show got me here, right? Like you have that moment where Aerion Targaryen is just like he knows he's not going to win this, and he beats him to a pulp and then drags him out. And as they're looking after him, I'm like, are we not doing the Baelor thing? Because it happens a little bit differently in the books. And here he walks in, and I'm just like, what is, like, are you changing something? And then it goes into the scene about, could you someone help me in my armor? My visor's cracked. And he's not wearing anything with a visor, right? And then the moment that happened, I'm like, okay, we're doing this. And as soon as they lift his helmet out, he touches the back of his head, which is missing thanks to Makar's miss, and he falls, and boom! What a way to end an episode! Like I feel like okay, this just when you got real comfortable, the writers were like, "Welcome, this is Game of Thrones, man. This is a."
No, it's the same. It's the thing, right? The worst thing that you can do in Westeros is be a righteous guy. If you're righteous, you're dead. Like it's like the Ned Stark, like how Ned kind of dies in the penultimate episode of the first season. It's very similar to that. So it stays true to the Game of Thrones things. Don't be righteous.
Do you know what the episode in which Ned Stark dies is called?
No.
Rohit, do you know what it's called?
Baelor's Blessing or something like that.
It's just called Baelor. It's just called Baelor.
The Sept of Baelor, yeah.
Because he
it's called Baelor. Yeah.
Yeah, because he literally gets killed at the Sept of Baelor, and Arya is hiding at the Baelor statue. So, so when Ned is being led to the gallows, he turns to, I forget the guy's name. He turns to him and yells Baelor, and then he turns and he looks at where Arya is because he like, and that's when he whisks her away. So when this episode aired, I sent this message to Rohit, like just a picture of that's exact screen grab, and he was like, I don't know what you're saying. And then I told him, and he's like, "Wow, you really are a nerd."
So, but okay, so what
Oh,
is the
that does
best
my
course
head
of
in.
action right now? Because like I've not watched House of Dragon at all. So,
Okay,
what is the best course of action in the sense where should I go back to rewatching Game of Thrones or should I watch House of Dragon?
The
What's
best
your
course
I
of
will answer
action
your
is status
question.
quo.
I will just answer that question towards the end of this episode. Let's just get through
okay?
this because I feel like that is an important bit that we have to address. Okay,
Cool.
so let's go. Let's. So that I think episode 5 is wonderful. Episode 6 is almost
No, but
it
also
felt.
let one second. Episode 5, right? Like I mean the whole build up in episode 4 is to the battle, and you expect that the episode will be like the most of the episode will be the battle scenes. The fact that they made most of the episode flashbacks also was such an interesting choice because I was expecting 30 minutes of like people like hitting like swords on
Which
shields and
also
just
isn't
fighting on and
realistic.
on.
So I like the fact that they didn't show 30 minutes of fighting because that's not happening, right? Like, nobody has
Yeah,
in
yeah.
full armor. You're not going to fight 30 minutes. So, in that sense, they made it a lot more realistic and still managed to have like a lot of story
Yeah.
packed into 30 minutes. It was really
It
good.
it uses a trope very common in anime. As a matter
You
of
know,
fact, I think this is very much an anime trope. I was watching this, I'm like, this feels like an episode of Bleach where the
Mm,
protagonist gets punched into a different universe and is
mm,
is basically going through like events in his head to try and will himself back up. And
mm.
then when he gets back up, he's all the more stronger. Like this is directly like I was like, "Well, this is so Bleach." And television anime shows have been doing this for eons, where the
Mm.
hero has to dig deep within themselves to uh, to ultimately come out victorious in a scenario that's overwhelmingly against them.
The whole get up trope what it remind me of is like the ending of Ghulam, if you guys have seen Ghulam, right? Like when Amir
very
Khan's all
true.
knocked out and the entire like crowd goes get up, get up, get up, and he
Yeah,
gets up and
yeah,
he
yeah,
fights. A very Bollywood thing also.
yeah,
Like
yeah. It is very
Ghulam is
Bollywood.
my Ghulam is what it reminded me of when that happened when he was like down and out.
I'm glad you pulled
Wow.
Ghulam out of the ether there.
Yeah, Ghulam and Ghulam of the Seven
Ghulam of the
Kingdoms.
Seven
Okay.
Kingdoms. We should do a podcast together, Abhin. We seem to have
Come,
great
yeah,
chemistry.
why not? Yeah, yeah. Okay.
But yeah, which leads us
Uh,
to which sort of leads us into the last episode. I think again they tied a nice bow to the whole thing. In terms of the scope of the episode, given what the fifth episode was, this felt a lot more again smaller in scale, like the first couple of episodes. Right, everything's
Mm,
there's like 2-3 set pieces and probably 4-5 conversations across the entire episode. But a lot happens, especially I think every time Sir Arlen is there on screen, this episode, there's a lot of depth to the narrative, right? The part
mm,
where um, uh, Dunk imagines his conversation with Sir Arlen. Again, it sort of boils down the essence of knighthood, right? And he
mm,
talks about knights leaving, before leaving, they nail a penny to the tree, and
mm,
it just shows that the spirit of high meaning chivalry where people used to chase glory, and there was this idealism to knighthood really boils down everything that the story is trying to convey in that one conversation. And then of
mm.
course where you have Westerosi Fast and Furious 7 uh, right at the end there. I mean, I'm trivializing it by calling it that, but it's actually a beautiful scene and sort of like a passing of the torch, right? Where Squire
Yeah.
has become the
And
knight.
I also think that the bit where I think they tease in the conversations that they might go to Dorne next season. And I think my biggest, like, the characters I like the most in the books were the Dornish people. Like, that got omitted out of the Game of Thrones show, like, horrendously, because, like, the Sands and all them play a major role in the books, but in, like, Game of Thrones, they killed all of them off just like that. So Dorne is a place I really wanted to see more of in Game of Thrones, and the fact that the next season they're teasing about going in that direction, just gives me more anticipation for another year to like wait and like watch where this goes.
Sorry to sort of burst your bubble, but they go to Dawn and come back between the two books. So the second book is
Oh
not in Dawn.
damn!
you know what? This
Yeah.
conversation that Falah just kickstarted uh, unlocked a a core memory that I had suppressed, and now I hate his fucking guts because I'm about to get into
What
it.
happened to you, Abhin?
So,
Oh, the
so I will explain.
sands.
So, not Sands. Anyway, Falah, and it is the year 2013. Falah and
Hmm.
I are going for a quiz,
Okay.
and I think the early part of 2013, right? I think Falah knows where this is going, and we're
So
driving,
fresh.
and he is just like. And I'm like, what are you reading? I said, I'm reading Thomas. Oh, this is pretty interesting. And Fala's like, bro, I just finished it. Fucking insane, dude. He killed Robstock. And I was just like, I was like, Fala, I'm going to murder you. I'm like,
But
what?
then that already happened in the show. I think the
No,
Red
it
Wedding
hadn't.
episode had
It
come out
hadn't.
before that. What are you
No,
saying?
2013
November.
did.
November 2013, November was Red Wedding, or like around the second half of the year. This was the first half.
Oh,
I
shit.
was just like, voila. I was outside the Malaga hospital. I remember this so clearly. I was like, you fucking asshole. I was so pissed off.
Hey, spoilers was not a thing back then. Like nobody
Fuck off.
really.
I was just like, and then I got to it like 10 days later, and I'm like, fuck. It is
Shit.
somehow
I'm so
not
sorry.
not the worst because he dulled the impact of that. Somehow the worst thing about that book was, and I mentioned this on prior Game of Thrones episodes, was being stuck on a flight, reading The Mountain versus the Viper in the midst of turbulence. So I am like a big fan of Oberyn Martell, and I'm like flipping through this big chapter where the Mountain and the
Hmm.
Viper. I'm like, okay, this fight has gone on for far too long. The air hostess has come to us and said, you might want to strap in as a fair bit of turbulence. So we're all like buckled in. And within about 2 pages, I'm like, yeah. The mountain gets him in a chokehold where they're wrestling on the ground, and then he starts punching his face into a point where his armor starts smoking because Oberyn's mortal face is gone. And I was like, fuck my life. This is somehow worse than the Red Wedding.
No, but also for me,
Yes,
like
so
in
much.
terms of the Game of Thrones show, I think Oberyn Martell's death is after which the show went downhill for me. Like up until like that season four, I think that was Game of Thrones was good.
Yeah,
Season
basically
five
one,
is where the
two was
nosedive
better
of the
than one.
show began.
Yeah, two was better than one, three was better than two, four was better than three, and then it just year on year
Nosedive
started
from
getting worse.
season five, yeah. So I
Last
think
year,
that
Rohit
Season
sent
eight
me a
was.
message. Yeah, Rohit sent me a message last year. He was rewatching season 4. He's like, bro, this thing is just firing on
Yeah, yeah,
all
peak
cylinders.
television.
Why?
no,
What
so
to
even
say?
now
Dialogue, cinematography,
I
everything.
plan to rewatch Game of Thrones, I'll stop at season four. I do not want to go beyond and like ruin the rest of it.
I stopped at 5. I wasn't going to go beyond. Moving on, I mean, for the most part, that's such a like them nailing a penny to the tree, and eventually the tree having no places to nail a penny because most of those knights never came back is such a it's so damning, and I think it doesn't land half as well if Peter Claffey isn't as good an actor that he is, right? He really brings that out. There's this weird moment where this, I mean, it's never happened in the books where he refuses to take Aegon because he blames himself for the death of Baelor. That back and forth never really happens. It's a pretty straightforward thing, and the whole switching the thing where Egg essentially runs off with him without telling Makar is again a choice made purely for the show. It very much felt like a Home Alone kind of moment. Like, where's where's Egg? Where the fuck did he go? So
Yeah,
that's
in the
the
book, it's a lot more DDL, like Ja Aegon, ji le apni zindagi.
he's like go. I mean, he's like 11th in line to the throne. What difference does it make? Go figure it out, dude.
No, fair enough. I think for the most part, even though I know the last change is potentially significant given the ramifications it could have down the line, but I'm sure it's probably more a way to bring Makar back into the storyline in future seasons. But for the most part, I would say whatever changes they made to the source material, A, clearly seemed to be with George's approval because he was very closely involved with the production and script writing process, and B, only seemed to have improved our experience of the
Mm.
story. So I think all things considered, very happy with what they've put out, and only looking forward to it, right? And I mean, I know you wanted to talk about how this story ties into other threads in George's universe. So I think I'm going to step back now and yield the floor to you.
There is one thing in the Game of Thrones universe that I love more than anything in this world, or especially in this world of A Song of Ice and Fire. It is what truly happened at Summerhall. And that is where this story is leading.
Mm.
And Dexter Saul Ansel might have just revealed a pretty big spoiler with what happens to the folks at Summerhall. Have you read this?
That is exactly what happened.
We know Dunk survives, but we don't know if Egg survives yet.
I know about it.
Summerhall is how he dies or something.
Okay, spoiler zone, everybody. If you don't want to know what
welcome
happens 11 books down the line, fuck off now. But if you're okay with spoilers, because I don't think we're going to get 11 seasons of this TV show. So what if he survives Summerhall? If Dunk survives Summerhall, what is the ramification? I don't get that. What is the significance?
What happens in Summerhall? Come on, like I don't know. I'm like clueless.
Okay.
Okay, so Summerhall is this great tragedy that takes place, right, for the Targaryens. So Egg essentially is 11th or 12th in line, right? So because he's never going to be king. So what ultimately ends up happening is Daeron and Baelor's sons both die in a plague some 2 weeks after this, which then puts Aerys the First as king. He's a shit king. He also dies. So basically, Bloodraven is ruining and ruling Westeros in his stead as Hand of King. Then when he dies, Maekar becomes the king.
How are you going for Summerhall? You're going from Daeron, dude.
Basically, a bunch of things happened, right? So a bunch of things happened where a bunch of people end up dying, and eventually the choice is between Aemon and Egg. Aemon's like, I'm a maester, I'm going to the wall, bye. And he heads. And Aegon becomes the king and becomes Aegon the Unlikely. People don't want him to become a king because he spent most of his time running around with peasants and he's talking about reforms for the small folk, which is very unking-like. Aegon is trying, he tries.
He's basically the Zoran Mamdani of Westeros.
Yeah.
Yes.
He's basically the Zoran Mamdani. Yes. Yeah. So basically Zoran Mamdani of Westeros. Before Zoran, there was Aegon the Unlikely. So Aegon tries for many years. He tries, puts out a few rebellions, sends Bloodraven to the wall because Bloodraven's a truth. Keep iterating this. And then there comes a point where Aegon becomes convinced that the only way people will listen is if he manages to hatch dragons. He becomes obsessed with dragons. So there's one big event happening at Summerhall where they're all gathered to celebrate, I think, basically the birth of Rhaegar. Rhaegar is about to be born.
The tourney that accompanies it. So it's called the tourney at Summerhall. That's where the tragedy
Yes, so at Summerhall, Egg decides to hatch a bunch of dragon eggs using wildfire, a bunch of sorcerers, blood magic. Goes horribly wrong. Everybody dies, but Rhaegar is born. As a result. And he has a dream that dragons will hatch, and the running theory is that Egg finally gives into Targaryen madness and dies, and Dunk ends up saving Princess Rhaella and what's his name, and Aerys, and as a result, Rhaegar is born. So I think in episode 6, where he says where he talks about giving up a hand and a foot, it's like, what good could this foot have done? And I think Maekar or someone mentions that this foot will come in handy at some point. Maybe the gods have decided that this foot is required for something, which is my running theory, that it is what essentially allows Rhaegar to be born at Summerhall because it must have saved the princess's life.
Yeah, but I don't think the show will get there, man. Like, I really think
that is the conclusion of the Duncan Egg novels. That's where it's supposed to end.
Oh, crazy.
But now my question is, given what's happened in Game of Thrones, all this nonsense just for that fucking Arya to kill the Night King, Jon doesn't even matter at the end. So maa chudai Rhaegar, maa chudai Dunk. All of this is for nothing.
Fuck it, that's not my canon. I have blocked out season 8.
And Dany gets killed and the throne is melted and all of that jazz.
Who has a better tale to tell than Bran the Broken?
Broken. Everybody. I think the show has ended on a very nice note. Sort of has dragged us back into the world of Ice and Fire. Given that
it's kind of what
the Dragon,
like the Mandalorian. It's like what the Mandalorian did for Star Wars, I guess. Like in a similar way, that is the first couple of seasons of Mandalorian generated a lot of goodwill
Pretty
for
much.
Star Wars, which they again
Pretty
squandered.
much.
So
Yeah. So it's
Yeah.
just a
Let's
matter
just
of
hope.
time.
Oh yeah, wait. They will squander. Season 3 is coming out. No, House of the Dragon. Yeah.
no,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah, that they are squandering, but like even Mandalorian and Grog, what's the Grogu
Grogu.
movies also.
Grogu.
This feels like an
Grogu.
masculine Mandalorian there.
Yeah. Grogu,
Yeah.
is this true?
Let's watch how House of the Dragon 3 squanders all that goodwill. But anyway, we know that next year also going to have next season of Duncan Egg, so there's that to look forward to.
No, so is House
But
of Dragon worth watching at all? That's the question.
I
No,
think it's worth watching, dude. I mean, season 1 definitely is worth watching. I think Paddy Constance's Viserys is quite a great depiction. The storylines in season 1 are nice. Season 2, up until Rook's Rest, is okay. Post that, it just devolves into like Fear and Loathing at Harrenhal for a big chunk.
Okay.
dude, Falah, there's like a lot of good stuff to watch out there. You don't have to waste your time with it. One, two,
Yeah,
one. Like
exactly.
he's not wrong what Abhin is saying, but on the one
Rather
hand, it's
watch
like leave it. Yeah.
rather watch GOT 1 to season 4 again.
Or watch Fargo, the season 5. There's so much good television out there. Don't waste your time.
But anyway, I'm really looking forward to another Sun Kingdoms. I loved most things about this show. I'm really looking forward to how the next season pans out. I've been chasing the soundtrack and it's released today, so I'm very excited to like have that playing on repeat for quite some time.
Mhm.
This show has made me it has not erased the pain of season 8 of Game of Thrones. And I need to reiterate this. I've said this on the Game of Thrones episode. I've said this on the House of the Dragon episode. I have no issues with turning Dany into the person she became. I just felt with the number of episodes that they had, it was a stupid choice, and it ultimately didn't land.
So that's the
I
thing,
mean,
right? I think the whole point was that they were rushing to do their Star Wars show, which never came to be.
Fucking Star
That
Wars
was
as
the whole
usual.
point. Like,
They showed up in an episode of Westworld with the dragon in the park. I was like, D&D. Yeah,
oh yeah,
there's an Easter egg in an episode of Westworld where they're in like a little box where they're programming the Drogon animatronic.
oh.
But concluding thoughts, Night of the Seven Kingdoms.
No, I think like it's a great back to basic story. It generates like a lot of interest and goodwill back to the Game of Thrones universe. Like I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think I'll rewatch it again. Also, like I think it's like I'm definitely going to recommend it to a lot more people who are like maybe who are tired of Game of Thrones and didn't want anything to do with it. It's a great show to like get back into Game of Thrones with. So yeah, like 10 out of 10 for me.
I
No
totally
complaints.
agree. I think what you said basically, right? It's the best property to bring people back into the universe. And if somebody watches it and says that they don't like it, I'm probably going to give them a clout in the ear.
Which is a good cloud in the air.
Yeah.
I have waxed lyrical about this show. I have waxed lyrical about the lore. I have nothing to say. I think I'm just going to say this. It's a fuck all time. We've had so many things happening in our lives. It's not like we're just trying to get through it. And when a show like this comes along, which really makes you feel good, it really instills a sense of warmth because of how the characters are portrayed, because how the actors are choosing to portray their characters and the story that they're choosing to tell. It's weird like calling a GOT universe show feel good, but this definitely is very feel good. I think Daniel Ings as Lionel Baratheon lights up the screen every time he's on screen. I thought Peter Claffey, as I've said repeatedly on this episode, was excellent. Dexter Soransel was great. Performances, great narrative, wonderful storytelling, and I love the final shot of this where it's the two of them walking into the horizon, and Sir Arlen, who's always been walking beside them, just takes a left and goes on his own journey because he knows Dunk is no longer alone. And so many great moments that just make you feel like, yeah, like this is something to recommend and something to just keep rewatching for the ages. A great season of television.
Agreed.
Okay, if you have to compare performance-wise as child actors, Joffrey versus Egg, like
Yeah, I mean, very different briefs, right? I think both of them excel in
Yeah,
their
yeah.
roles. If I gun to head, I would say Joffrey, like Jack Gleason, is a better performer because that's a harder role, right? But
Mm.
it's
I don't
equally,
even think it's close. It's not
Mm.
close.
yeah,
Not by
exactly.
any stretch of the
Uh,
imagination. What Jack Leeson did with that performance, that that slimy, snidey fucking character, dude.
yeah.
People found it difficult to separate him from the character. That's how good his
Yeah.
performance was. I think we're about to close this. So, Falah, if you have anything to plug, please go ahead. Falah is a renowned graphic novel writer. He has famously been arrested by the CBI for trying to infiltrate the RSS headquarters. There's a lot of interesting things about this guy's life. So, tell us, man, what else is going on?
So after a very long wait, my graphic novel is finally coming out. It's coming. Yoda Press is releasing the Musalman graphic novel. So hopefully, coming this Eid is what I'm hoping the graphic novel hit bookstores and available online.
Bye.
So
Yeah,
Musalman coming this Eid. So
Eid release.
keep your eyes open.
you should have this scene here from Salman, like Musalman.
Yeah, it's actually kind of like a 50th year anniversary because like from the time I started Musalman, it's been like 5 to 6 years, and it's like a 50th year anniversary kind of thing with the book coming out.
Musalman is a 2018 drop, no?
No, no, the comic book as opposed to the comic strip.
The
The
strips,
comic book
yeah.
started in 2020, and the storyline concluded in 2021. So it's a
Hmm.
5 year anniversary collection.
Okay, cool. Please keep an eye out for Falah's
Mhm.
new graphic novel. You can also see him live he's back doing stand up. So just follow him on the Musalman page for updates. And yeah, follow us on this page for updates. We'll be back again. I think we have a Safety Brothers episode coming up next, which should be fun.
Ooh.
Hmm. Which is interesting. I have to just rewatch Good Time and I'm good to go. No pun intended. And yeah, we'll catch you there. So until then, please take care. Do subscribe to the channel if you're new. Do give the video a like. It really helps us. It helps me when I'm editing these to show that it helps to know that people are watching and engaging and enjoying this content. So yeah, we'll see you on the next episode. Until then, take care and bye bye.
Jashri
Bye-bye.
7.
Jai Shri 7.